Elections are underway for the European Parliament. The United Kingdom and the Netherlands are all voting today, along with several other countries that are casting their votes over the next week.
The online activist group Avaz reports that there are more than 500 pages spreading right-wing propaganda on Facebook. Of those pages, the social media platform has removed 77. The company also deactivated more than 200 accounts.
Joining us now is CBS News contributor and senior editor for Wired magazine, Issy Lepowski. Good to see you.
You too.
All right, so what kind of misinformation has been spreading? I can only imagine because we've experienced it here in the United States, but what's the goal?
It's pretty much what we saw here in the United States, stoking this anti-immigrant tension that is so alive in the EU and is driving a lot of these far-right candidates in the EU. So some of the misinformation that they caught were things like a movie clip that they were spreading and saying it was news footage of migrants attacking a police car. Another fake news story about migrant drivers raping women in Europe. And so it's a lot of this sort of misinformation, this sort of fake news that we saw circulating about immigrants before the 2016 election here.
So sometimes when you see this stuff, it's so subtle, you know, and you can't really determine whether this is part of some sort of legitimate grassroots movement or something else, Russia or something more malicious. Do we know who's behind this stuff?
Well, in this case, Avaz basically crowdsourced this. They asked people, send us all of the stuff that you think looks a little fishy and we'll look into it. And so they found this huge trove of information, and then Avaz, sent it to Facebook, which further investigated it. And Facebook then said, okay, these are the 77 pages and groups we're taking down. These are the accounts that we've determined are fake. And so Facebook essentially is saying, we have not found that this is like we saw in the United States, where it's Russia or some single entity behind it, but it does, for various reasons, violate our policies. So it might have been, a number of different groups that are just trying to spread information. And remember, we did see that in 2016 here. You remember this talk of the Macedonian fake news artists. Sometimes they were just teenagers,
yes.
Right? So people have a variety of motives. Sometimes it's political, sometimes it's profit, but regardless, Facebook is saying for all these different reasons, this stuff violated our policies and we've taken it down.
So this might sound provincial, but a lot of people may not be aware of what a parliamentarian in the EU may be responsible for. I mean, it's not like voting for a president in France or a prime minister in the United Kingdom. What's at stake here?
Well, what's at stake is basically the EU. What we're seeing is this rise of far-right candidates who are very nationalist, and they want to put the priorities of their individual countries ahead of the priorities of the EU. And so there is this fight right now to basically keep the EU strong and to keep it united rather than to have every country out for itself. That's what's at stake in this election.
So could Russia be influencing some of these targeted campaigns? Because for them, that represents a win. If the EU is disunited, that could mean NATO becomes weaker. There's a whole host of things that follow.
I certainly don't want to attribute it to Russia. Facebook hasn't done that, and Avaz hasn't done that. In fact, Facebook hasn't really done any attribution here or announcement at all, which I think is really key, because if we didn't have this volunteer group seeking out all of this content, Facebook never would have announced it. So Facebook has been good about telling us when they find Russia or Iran or some single entity behind one of these information operations. But for everything else, for all the other stuff that violates their policies but is still sort of manipulative and poisonous, they haven't really been letting us know. And so that's, I think, a really important point here.
Yeah, that is, because I think if more people know, then we'll recognize stuff when it pops up on our Facebook page. We'll question stuff, but if we think, oh, none of this stuff's really happening, then, we're not going to question it. Issy, thank you so much.
Thanks, Issy.
Thank you.